questions. If you've had dreadlocks for any sort of extended period of time, you will be likely aware that the washing and drying process is not really all that fun. It's rare that you ask someone, you know, what's your favorite part about having dreadlocks? They won't say the washing and drying process because it's just not anyone's favorite part. The drying process in particular can be very time consuming, quite annoying, and just, you know, you just want to get it over and done with as quick as possible. For one, so that you can continue with your day, because you don't want to spend your entire day just sort of dealing with damp, drippy, annoying dreadlocks. You don't want to have to sort of write off your entire afternoon because your hair is wet. And for two, because you don't want to risk the sort of problems that come along with leaving things damp for extended periods of time, such as in the case of dreadlocks, the risk of dreadrot, the risk of mould. Now, there are many different ways to dry dreadlocks. The way that you go with is going to depend on a specific situation. For example, someone who has short, thin dreadlocks and lives in a hot, dry place is probably going to do something slightly different to someone who has long, thick dreadlocks and lives in a damp, cold place. You know, different people, different situations are going to have different requirements. There are various things like squeezing, shaking, various things you can do with towels. Someone even said to me that they drive around in circles in their convertible. I'm not sure that's the best way to do it, at least not for everyone, unless, yeah, I wouldn't personally recommend that one. In this video in particular, if you've read the title wherever it is, you will know that we're going to be talking about blow drying dreadlocks, the use of a hairdryer to dry dreadlocks. Now, hairdryers are pretty popular among dreadheads for pretty obvious reasons, and most dreadheads are gonna likely have access to a hairdryer in some form, because most people with dreadlocks will have had long-ish hair before they started their dreadlocks, and so likely will have had or have access to a hairdryer. But lots of people ask, is it appropriate to use a hairdryer on dreadlocks? Is it effective? Is it safe? Now, the risk that blow drying poses to dreadlocks is the same risk that blow drying poses to regular hair. Remember, the dreadlocks are still actually made from hair, so still makes sense. That risk is damage due to excess heat. Excess heat can damage hair. Dreadlocks are made from hair. Excess heat can damage dreadlocks. The problem is that dreadlocks are slow drying. You can dry the outside pretty quick. You can just use a towel and dry the outside of a dreadlock, but to dry it through to the core, that takes work, that takes time. And that's what you really need to dry, because that is where the moisture is going to get retained. That's going to make them feel damp. That's where you risk things like mold, dreadrot, stuff like that. So that's where you got to dry through to. And if you just take your blow dryer and try to dry dreadlocks in the same way that you used to dry long hair, it doesn't really work out all that well. What you find is you're moving the hairdryer around your hair, blah, 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 blah. It dries the outside of the dreadlock. The cores still stay damp. If you dry for long enough, you'll find that it slowly dries more and more, but it's not that quick of a process, and it doesn't really feel like you're gaining all that much from using the hairdryer. They'll sort of feel warmed up from the use of the hairdryer, but when you take the hairdryer away, you'll realize that they're actually still damp, and you know, it seems like a bit of a waste. Some people will then be tempted to crank the heat on the hairdryer and really turn it up, and this is where you end up with the risk of damaging the dreadlock, because when you turn up the hairdryer really high, you're going to end up concentrating a lot of heat down onto one specific area. I do not actually believe this is really going to actually help you dry the dreadlocks any faster, because what you'll find is you take the really high temperature hairdryer around your head, you're likely going to find that you will make your head feel too hot and scald your skin before you actually dry the dreadlock through to the core. And what sort of happens then is you're moving the really hot hairdryer around and you're frying the outside of the dreadlocks, but not actually warming the dreadlocks through to the core, because you can't apply that heat for long enough before it becomes too uncomfortable or damaging. So hairdryers probably not sounding like all that great of an option right now. You know, they're either ineffective or damaging, but I still use a hairdryer to dry my dreadlocks. The difference is I don't try and dry my dreadlocks in the same way that I would try and dry regular hair with a hairdryer. Instead of just moving my hairdryer around my dreadlocks, either applying a small amount of heat at a time or a high amount of heat into one specific spot, I combine my hairdryer with a towel and use the two in tandem. I take my damp dreadlocks, I wrap them in my dry towel, I make what has been referred to as a towel tunnel. Then I use my hairdryer to blow warm air into this towel tunnel. What happens then is this warm air is trapped inside the towel, so instead of concentrating a lot of heat down onto one specific part of the dreadlock, it warms all of the dreadlocks at once. I use a medium heat rather than a high heat, because a medium heat is all I need. I'm gently warming the dreadlocks. The heat is evenly distributed around all the dreadlocks, and it allows the dreadlocks to warm through rather than just get fried on the outside. I find this works much better than any sort of other hair drying method that I've used, just using a hairdryer on my hair. I find that other methods either end up with the hot air just sort of warming the room more than it warms my hair, which isn't a great use of time, or I find that the hairdryer just becomes too hot, makes my scalp uncomfortable, and risks damaging my dreadlocks. As I said, the towel tunnel allows a medium heat to gently warm through all the dreadlocks and really helps keep my drying times reasonable. That is the way that I personally dry my dreadlocks with a hairdryer. If you've seen my how to dry dreadlocks video, I'll leave it linked in the description if you're interested. You'll see that I do use it in combination with other methods such as using a towel and squeezing and shaking. I like to get my dreadlocks as dry as possible before I use the hairdryer, because any moisture that I can sort of shake out or squeeze out, that's stuff that I don't have to blow dry out, so it's all helpful. Whenever I mention a towel tunnel type method for drying dreadlocks, people will bring up those helmet style salon hair dryers. Now I believe those would probably be also quite useful for drying dreadlocks. However, I'm not sure how it would work with the helmet coming only down to here and the dreadlocks hanging down here. So I've never personally looked into using one of those myself, because, I mean, there's the added expense of buying another hairdryer, whereas I already have a hairdryer and I already have a towel, so therefore I always have the sort of materials required to put together a towel tunnel. And even if I travel somewhere, even to a cheap motel, I know I'm going to be able to find a hairdryer and a towel, and because it does not require a super fancy, really hot hairdryer, it just requires some gentle heating, it's still going to work pretty much with any hairdryer that I come across. So that's my video on blow drying dreadlocks. As I said near the start, what works for one person won't necessarily work for another person. It depends on the specific situation, what a specific person needs to keep their dreadlocks dry and happy. But I personally find that the towel tunnel method has been working for me for many years now, so that is what I tend to lean to when I have damp dreadlocks that I need to get dry so I can continue with my day. If you found this video helpful, useful, informative, you can click the like button. If you're looking for dreadlocks tips, help, guide, advice, you can find all my stuff on lazydreads.com, and you can of course join in on the Lazy Dreads Facebook page at facebook.com/lazydreads. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you again next time. Farewell!